Welcome to another episode of The Next Show here in Hamburg, and welcome to you.
Thank you.
Great to have you in person.
Great to be somewhere.
Great to be somewhere, I love that. It's apparently the third season of our show already.
Yes.
Unbelievable. When our team decided to go virtual in 2020, we expected this to be a temporary state, a placeholder for our next conference, which couldn't happen back then for obvious reasons. Almost 2 years later, the show is now a permanent part of our offering to you, the Next community, which is growing constantly, and we are really grateful for that. And this phenomenon that digital offerings are an integral part of the portfolio is something we see even with brands whose products were previously primarily analog. Whether it's sports brands like Nike buying NFT startups or supermarkets entering the Animal Crossing space, user behavior has shifted massively. Digital experiences are at the center of their expectations. We could see that coming way before the pandemic, but this development has been given a real boost by the situation we experienced in the past 2 years. In today's episode, we will take a look at what has changed in all our behavior and what that means for 2020 and beyond. To do so, we have invited Chris Böhnke as our guest today. He's a managing and group director in Germany at FJORD, a global design and innovation consultancy and part of the Accenture family, as is the Next conference as well. Chris will explain relevant phenomena in conversation with you, Monique.
Yes, and it's such an interesting time as well. I mean, the FJORD report that came out, the fabric of life, I do think something has really changed in the fabric of life. The last 2 years we were forced to sit at home, we were forced to not only share information and do our meetings online, but also share our lives online and process our emotions. So we have changed. All of us have changed a bit, and that's what I'm going to talk about to Chris.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Even we connected on a different level, because usually we were just in touch once a year, very closely for the Next conference, obviously. Now we've been in touch all year long. I know your living room. I know everything.
Exactly.
But I know your dog.
It's a really big dog.
Definitely. So great to have you and Chris here. So I'm delighted and hand over to you for the conversation.
Thank you very much. The world is changing and we need new systems and new designs, and I'm delighted that we have Chris Böhnke here, who is the managing group director of FJORD. And that's an agency full of designers and people thinking about this new world.
It's true, yes.
Okay, so how has the 2 years been for you? How has the pandemic affected being the managing director of a group of designers?
Wow, it's been crazy for everybody, I guess, but in my role, especially to make sure that you have a team that actually naturally works from a studio and sees each other every day, single day, even though we cross-collaborate, but every single day you have these 50, 60 people around you, and now they're all at home. I guess it's been keeping me thinking a lot about what will happen with the new normal, the thing that we'll do after, and I guess that's also how my last 2 years have been to figure out how do you empower talent that is not extrovert when they cannot be in the same room and let people feel what they will have to do and want to do, and how do you make sure that you still get the good quality in design out there if you're not able to physically see each other and touch and do things manually.
Because you also discover how different people really are, right? Because there's lots of people who flourish at the moment, who are delighted to be working from home and not to have to deal with all the others all the time.
Yes.
I mean, is there sort of a division in your teams where you say like, oh, now I understand, you're an introvert, you're an extrovert, you are...
That's a good point. I would say, no, there's not a division, it's just that people have different moments in the day and in their work related to silent work, collaboration, meeting time, and just casual networking. And I would say that every place, not just our studios, but also our clients' places, have been designed in a kind of uniform way. You have to abide the rules of that place, and they're not necessarily made for everybody's cadence between these four types and percentages of how much they do. So I do believe that there's a bigger part of our team who's now extremely happy to have more silence, because it was a loud place, music, always banging. At the same time, there's a group of people that really miss that, and that also feed back that it's impossible to mimic that in a fully remote environment. And so I guess it's not a division as much as a challenge to me and the team to make sure that the places that we have are modular enough to now cater for these uncovered needs and wants in type of work. And I think that's fine. It's just an evolution.
Okay, but we'll end up with different offices eventually, different workspaces. They're not offices anymore. They're half our lives after all. Let's talk about the reason we invited you over here. That's the FJORD Trend Report. Now the Trend Report comes out every year. It's not like a trend report about, oh, people are now super interested in this and they're buying that and the new hobbies of the year are this and the favorite color is taupe or whatever. It's a trend report about not even about technology, it's a trend report about how we relate to each other and actually how the pandemic has changed that.
Yeah.
Is that a good, what did you set out with the report?
Yes, with the report, I think, as you said, we try to make sure that we do something tangible for next year versus the 5, the 10, the 15-year big old trends. And also, as you said, they're not supposed to just guide you in, okay, here's what you need to hit, but more, here's what you need to understand. So you need to see, we develop them every year with all of the 45, 46, depending on how you count, studios across the planet, 1,700 designers saying in May, okay, let's look at all of our qualitative work, because we do a lot of that. We talk to people, we try to understand systems, and then collide to, okay, what does it mean will matter next year in how we relate to each other, society, institutions, yes, and brands, clients, and with brands, B2B as well as B2C. And when we collide that all together, I think the secret sauce of them is that they work by themselves, but they also work as a chord, almost like if you were playing a keyboard, to say you understand the friction between them, and that excites space to design into, rather than am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? We want to help our clients to understand this is the place where you can play. Here is the interests and needs, not just humans, but planet, cross species actually. And then you get to play with that, to figure out what will you do with them. And that's also the reason why there's usually 7 plus minus 2, because you can't have more that you look at in a year. And this year is 5 trends that try to do that.
Now before we dive into the 5 trends, I mean, seriously, literally, how do you do that if you have 1,700 people with ideas of what the most important trends are? Do you have a big Google spreadsheet where people...
Good question. Spreadsheet is not very much liked by the talent that we have in design and
you have
innovation.
a little quiz where you...
Yes, so literally around about the same time, we invited people all physically. Now we invited them virtually into a 2 to 3 day workshop session where people share their findings. We collate them almost as in, I would say, clusters, bigger bubbles of things that relate to each other, and then we also show the frictions between them. And that really rough, raw, usually text, but then pictures, doodles, we sent over to one of our founders who has the great challenge to combine it, or Mark Curtis has to combine all of that stuff into something that is tangible, and then sends out a team that asks every team in the studios, here's roughly what we think is going to be signals. What are the signals out there in your different countries, because we're all over the world now? What is really happening? And then is what is being brought together and then synthesized into this very rich kind of thing that you can use in every country and break down to every place and every cultural context, but is also universal in a sense for the globe with different nuances.
And that's also why it takes like 9 months to prepare it. Yeah. Instead of at the end of the year, let's do a brainstorm and write down. Okay, trends, now the new fabric of life. What are the 5 most important things we should know?
Okay, first of all, the 6th thing you should know about the 5 things is the new fabric of life is, as all of our trends, a continuation of last year we looked for, what do we do with this? Pandemic, remote, basically being torn out of our roots to how we operate. Now, new fabric of life means you're weaving. And weaving is always, it's dependent on friction of threads that come into one another. And we believe that this year is going to be the renegotiation of your interaction with institution, brand, or your own employer, your family, in many different ways. And in a nutshell, all of the 5 trends play into these different strings that you're interweaving. The first one is called Come As You Are, which is probably the most fundamental one when you start with, this is about you. And what you see around yourself now is that people start to care less and less, to the extent of not care at all, what used to be social norms for behavior. Look at Simone Biles basically taking herself out of the most important sports event she could possibly be in by saying, I'm not well, I won't do it. Come as you are means you take yourself first and you renegotiate the terms on which previously you were supposed to act. She wasn't supposed to do that because she was supposed to be famous, successful, adored in that event, and then if she won, which she probably would have, all the way through the next 3 years, connected to business, institution, America, all of that stuff. She didn't do that, and it was still okay. And this hints at us renegotiating what is the things that we want to stand for, purpose. The big resignation is one of those things, right?
Yeah.
People
so
quitting
all those
the
people
jobs.
quitting their jobs.
Yeah, it's related to you don't want to play by the rule that you thought was there any longer, and you don't have to because you have the creative economy. People can just go off and be making a living on content, videos, right? Literally, consumers become competitors of the brands that they were buying earlier. And that's something that also brands need to understand. And I guess because we talked about this in the beginning, the most crucial part about this is that this relationship with the employer is not just about, do you have enough purpose for me? But it's also, do you act with me what I want, where I want to work? I have a couple of clients in our region here, so the German-speaking area, that still need to understand that there is a negotiation going on between employee and employer around, I want to work from home more, I will not accept that you say I should do that less because you want me here and you want me to be available. So
it's not only that they want something, they also do not accept the existing rules anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not just negotiating in your pay package, whatever. No, it's I don't agree with your rules.
Exactly, and think about it, coming from a German, not accepting the rules, crazy. It's this difference between me and the collective. This is being reset.
So these 2 years that we've experienced as a collective, and most of us have experienced this at home with people that we live with, have resulted in an attitude of, I want this and I'm not going to be part of your collective rules anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And you're hitting immediately on the second thing, the thread that is weaving with this, I want this, is over when it comes to stuff. So this is another thing that interacts with it, right? I want more agency about what I do and how I live, because I've seen now the hard way, right? There is a boat in the Suez Canal, stuff is not on the shelves. Generally, everybody knows, and a lot of youth, if you ask them, there's studies out there, think the planet is, sorry for my French, fucked already. So now the question is, what does it mean? And we think this trend is called the end of abundance thinking. It's already clear that capitalism and infinite growth is not a thing. Now we realize infinite stuff isn't either. Yeah. And I guess that's something that is connected to this, and it's awakening. And it's not so, don't get me wrong, it's not me harping on around sustainability. We all know that that's important. It's already been important for years. But what we think that is going to happen next year is for people to not only require sustainable or circular, but people will now require regenerative. They want to work for companies, give their money to companies, and interact with institutions that not only do net zero, no damage, but do positive effects. Think about the goods that are being produced that you eat. How do they get produced? Does this help the planet? Does it help other species? And that's a big shift in a lot of ways.
And do people also, because I don't think anybody would disagree. I mean, if everybody would say, yes, sure, I want that. Yeah. But they have to pay more for it maybe, or buy less, and the brands or the producers have to be around. I mean, is there enough there already? Exactly.
So A, there's not enough there. B, you have inflation that the majority of the population has not ever experienced. Like this magic line of 4% inflation is now breaking down. It means stuff gets not only less available because of something being stuck in a canal or a pandemic, it's also more expensive, which makes you think, do I need to have all of that? And the things that I then can afford and want to buy, how are they made to avoid that things generally will not be available because we run out of resources or the planet gets so hot that we have even more problems. So this gets into this pressure chamber, which you could also positively phrase to say people understand interconnectedness finally because it now hurts.
Yeah.
If I just moved and I wanted a new IKEA shelf. For 3 months I cannot get this IKEA shelf, and this sounds silly, right? But you said, do people feel it? Is it something that they will do beyond the nice words around, yes, I'm sustainable and I'm all pro saving animal lives? No,
but there's a real shortage.
It's real, yeah. I mean, there's a real impact.
There's
now.
No paper, there's no vinyl, there's no wood. I mean, it's basic stuff is not there or very expensive. But it's strange because when you think of the end of abundance, you think of a more sober lifestyle, you think of being more careful with things, and at the same time there's this incredible convenience now weaving through our lives, where you can order anything anytime, it will arrive the next day or the same day, and it seems to be in conflict with each other, right?
Yeah, totally, and I think that's also you can see the struggles, or at least many people that I work with or talk to align these things. I think we talked about flexitarians already a year and a half to 2 years ago, and this is now happening, and people will be shifting. So for example, these home delivery services that come within 10 minutes, it's like the last bravado of the Roman Empire moment of capitalism. It's like, yes, end that. If you thought we were gone, end that. And that's going to run into so many problems because now consumers will think about, do I really need this, and where is it coming from, and is it good? So I guess, yes, this year this is why it's also the end of abundance thinking. I'm quite hopeful that this year we will look at that. The year after, it's hopefully end of abundance doing, because you first gotta switch it so that you can actually stop things for real, because also regenerative practices take time, right? Yeah. Switching over farming to regenerate land is not something that you can just go to the good people that actually have these farms right now and say, chop chop, go change everything, and please on your own budget.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
It's this whole supply chains, the whole system, you actually call it the end of capitalism. But I'm very curious what will come next. But let's first go to the next 3 trends, because you have 5.
Yeah, exactly. The perfect segue from things and stuff get less available is virtually, intellectually, there is now infinity. The metaverse, the biggest bullshit bingo words that we will have. That's not it's not a research thing, it's just a trend. Everybody's talking about it, few people understand it, and the reason why is possibly, and that's why it's called the next frontier, the trend is not called the metaverse. The next frontier is defining what that space that is virtually infinite should be like in order to accommodate for our need to express ourselves intellectually, and then also create an economy out of that. We already have to create an economy here, now we have a place. And I think something that is interesting about that, beyond the non-fungible tokens and how we can make money with it, and it's all good and true, and it's also part of our trend, yes, but if you ask me, for me the spatial element is what makes it interesting. Yes, Second Life, long time ago, didn't work. Why? Technology. Now, fast forward, Ready Player One movie, or book, I prefer the book actually, and you can physically experience each other far distance in a virtual space, and that will change a lot of things. You don't have users of a website or an app, you have participants.
We have visitors of a place.
Exactly.
You go somewhere, and you might go somewhere to hope other people are there. You don't have to send them an invite.
Exactly.
The place is permanent. It's digital and permanent, and it doesn't have to be a 3D game-like environment, right? It could be anything. It could be a sound space where
soundscape,
you go.
AR, like all of the technologies, yes. And I think this year what we're saying is that will finally be stepped into. You step into, there's so much to clarify. Transferability between the metaverses, logins and all of that. Then there's a huge aspect of ethics and diversity. Will this be good for inclusion because everybody can be who they want to be? Or is it just glitter on the fact that outside of the metaverse we're actually not diverse and inclusive the way that we want to be? And what will happen in there? Is that actually something will progress how we interact with one another? Or is it something where you go, maybe we shouldn't have done that part next to what we've already did?
But if you think of this truly immersive tech, I mean, the exact thing that makes it super attractive and interesting is also the same thing that makes it dangerous and will,
like every new medium.
prey on our worst sentiments. That's 3.
Yes,
Number 4.
So even before you step into the metaverse, there is a trend that we call this much is true. And this much is true is very much based on the fact that now for a lot of years and through one Trump, misinformation has been a big part of our lives. And on the other hand, we've never asked so many questions. We're probably among the generations, you, me, the kids even more so, they can Google anything and they'll get an answer, or they can just ask somebody around the corner. And that means for brands, institutions, that the new competitive edge is not anymore is my product the best in order to get attention. It's can I layer information in such a way, and this is very much a design trend especially, can I bring information into context in such a way that questions that I didn't even know that the consumer had are being answered, such as when I buy my Pangaya pullover here, I want to immediately see while I'm buying it that the factory that it's being produced in is good, is sustainable. The money that they're saving, does it go to regeneration or not? And all of this contextualization needs to be there, and most importantly for also the budget behind that, scalable. So what we think is on the one hand side, you need to look at what do you need to answer, even though that's not necessarily what is happening, what the consumer is doing right now. And on the other hand, you also need to figure out, can I do this via a artificial intelligence? Because chatbots,
need systems to...
Yes, exactly. Chatbots, conversational AI, we start getting used to this. We think that this year that this takes off because the technology is ready and people start to be ready to interact more with technological partners and stepping into the metaverse even more so. And that means that now you can actually bring context into it. For example, you take part in a charity lottery, you want to know where does the money of that charity lottery get spent? That you
it is an optimistic viewpoint you have, because I'm sure there's lots of people who think like, I actually rather not know where all my cheap clothes are produced or how this cow was killed, or I mean, there's lots of information that if you don't know it, you're happier than if you do know it.
This is true, yes, based on the past, and if you test it, especially with younger user groups, if you don't have that information and there's another brand that has it, they'll choose that one. So that's why it's about the competitive edge. I'm not saying that
you don't have to outrun the lion, you just have to outrun the other guy.
Exactly.
Okay, so everybody wants to be a little bit more transparent, just enough to compete,
transparent,
to beat
and
competition.
Then after transparency, on point. What you want to know, what you care about, and with the data that we now hold about ourselves, there is a possibility to translate preference for what you want to buy also into context that you need to serve as an information.
I think we have one trend left.
One, yes, and you asked the perfect question around, because you said there's people who don't want this, we need to care. And the last one is all about handle with care, caring, right? And this is born out of a pandemic, yes, so there is basically a health-related crisis, and this has propelled health into the foreground of everything. And now everybody's picking up on it in different ways, and arguably so every business has to. It starts with every business has to have a chief health officer, because we have so many looming mental health, body posture, economic problems looming that are not even seen, that if you don't have one, your employees will say, well, so what's your program? How are you going to help me? What are the benefits working here for my health and for the health of my family, my kids? So
but that also gives a big advantage to big companies, because small companies cannot hire somebody to be the health officer.
That's true, but small companies have the ability to reach more direct. And caring is not only about, can I offer a lot? It's very often also, can I be there and intervene? Because how does mental health problems actually propel? It's a disconnect, right? Between what you do and the pressures upon you. That's one element of it. The other one is that you have a huge industry convergence in health. Now, insurers start to care about not only collecting all of your data and having a nice patient data set, but they want to make sure that you are healthy longer, so they invest into health services, which usually they were just a payer for. Now they become the provider. And this translates then all the way down to, is what I do as a brand, even if I have no relationship to helping you being healthy, making sure that I don't make you sick, addicted. disconnected from your family. And now look at all of this, and this is a nice friction again with the creator economy around more noise. And then how do you cater that? How do you people not make addicted to Instagram, TikTok, all of that? How do you ensure that the food, the brands that you're serving are not addicting people anymore and make them worse? And that's the flip side.
That goes very much against the grain of what these brands exist for, right? I mean, the driving forces is to make you stay in the app, or to have you watch more, or to eat crisps every day, or whatever. I mean,
all of these things are true, and it needs a business model shift, right? I agree with you, they need you to be there, but so does your family. They also need you to be there, and for a good reason. Is the reason to be served ads? Probably not, to an extent where you don't have a real life or where you're not able to psychologically disconnect. Probably not. And hence, the question is, can companies that are not able to go into health still understand their impact on your health so that they have an answer all the way to, you see that in America a lot, because at least in Germany people are not as polite, unfortunately, but in America when you call a bank, their call center in the end will say, please take care of yourself and be careful out there, which they didn't do.
But they also ask, how are you? And they don't expect you to answer that. So, you know,
that is correct. I acknowledge that. But
now I have a technology question there as well, please. Because if you put some of the responsibility for mental health issues with employers, and you have the tech, the tech exists to track somebody's social interactions digitally. I mean, Facebook can predict who is getting depressed. You know, the tech is there to actually track your employees and find out there's risk factors going on. You could also argue, I don't want my employer to be aware of my mental issues.
Yes,
I want them to be completely ignorant of how I'm doing.
Totally fine. Yeah. Yes, and I agree that actually, depending on the cultural background that you have, that's the norm. I think, especially in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, it's impossible to convince people, hey, please give up all of your information to make sure that we keep you healthy. Kind of the Britney Spears scenario that nobody wants. The thing is, you still need to offer something that is more meaningful than a webinar in mental health. Are you bad? Okay, here, watch this video and you'll be better. That's not going to help you as an employer. You will need to find ways that do not only fix, and here comes the friction with the regeneration, not only fix the problem, but is the way that your company is organized helping your people to stay healthy? Is the work amount, time, pressure, cadence set up in such a way that people will remain healthy over time? These are more important questions than, can I track you to make sure that you don't do something stupid? Yeah.
Now, those 5 trends together, they really point at a new world coming. I mean, a new way of brands and businesses and people and connections. And you know, you run a company full of designers, so they will want to design these new systems, right? And it's mentioned somewhere in the report. It says, you know, the innovation that we need now is not having something new all the time. It actually takes a much longer line of thought. It takes, you know, looking into the far future and then design the systems. So how do you make that change happening in your company? Because
so I think there's 2 angles to this. Angle 1 is that I think we need to design even closer with the people who would not use what's coming out, but the people that can help build what others will be using. So I think a big part is going to be shifting away from prescriptive innovation. We work with a brand, and the brand with us decides here's a new product, and then we'll need a lot of time, and then we'll throw it into the market. That's the past. I think what we need to do is similar to what people had to do during the pandemic, give platforms for behavior. Take, for example, being able to create your own clothing line and then sell it online on an e-commerce store that then contributes to you, says something about the innovation of how e-commerce should work for individuals and not the H&Ms, the Zaras, and everybody of this space. So setting these things up will need to be done with doers who are not yet doing, and that's exciting, right? And it vibes a lot with where the new generations think employment is going to go to. It's not going to be a fixed career. It's more gig. It's more what I want to do, more purpose-driven. And I think that's one. The other side of it is, and this is something that we're learning, but we need a lot of time to still learn it properly, and we need different talents, so shout out to everybody who wants to come, is to design for and with other species. A lot of the bigger problems that we have as humanity is killing fungi, bacteria, and misusing animals and abusing animals. Instead of seeing that as a collective ecosystem that is always there, we're just not having a really good interaction with it. So the biochemists out there, the neuroscientists out there, the future veterinarians that don't want to become veterinarians out there, they will be part of design teams very, very soon, because they will have the insight that you need in a co-creation process to actually try and test something new. None of my designers right now would say, yeah, you want this in fungi? No problem. Let me get them sorted. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's another thing that we have to do.
Yeah. I love the optimism, because you could also say, you know, there's a war looming, the planet is going down, there's a pandemic that will never stop, and we're all alone and getting miserable, but, you know, trust the designers. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Imagine this. It is the near future, and there is a crisis on planet Earth. We have the chance to board a space shuttle for a new planet, to settle there and create a new home for humanity. Chris Böhnke, due to your achievements in innovation and design, you've been among the 1,000 pioneers who've been chosen to travel with us to the new planet. But before you may board the space shuttle, you have to answer 5 questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh yes.
Question number 1.
Go for it.
Name one luxury object you would take to your new home.
The spaceship is small, but I would like to take my drum kit, if it were possible, just to bring some music along and to annoy people, just a tiny bit.
Yeah. What book should everyone read before boarding the space shuttle?
It's a good question. I think that since we're departing from what we've done and go to what we want to do in the future, there's this book called Humankind that talks about how people are actually good from when they're born and genetically, and it's written by Rutger Bregman, a Dutch guy. So I think that should be read by everybody so that we get along better than we have for a long time now.
Super interesting, yeah. I read that book too, really liked it.
Cool.
So what person should we take to the new planet? And your family you may also take.
Okay, they're included.
They're included.
All right, that's important. Pharrell Williams,
Yay.
I think. Yes, because we need creativity, we need inclusivity, we need people who push people out of their comfort zones, and I really think that that's the guy that we should take for it.
So we have drums and Pharrell Williams.
Exactly.
That's the perfect combination.
Yes.
That's almost a dance party.
Yes.
So what law do you think we should implement on the new planet?
It's a good one. It's related to the book recommendation. I think we should ban people from having real estate property, so not owning places and spaces any longer, because I think that's gotten us into a lot of the mess that we have right now. It's not against capitalism, it's just that people should be able to roam free and live where they want to be, and I think that would be setting us up for success. So I need to that more.
Fantastic. I like that thought. And finally, what tradition would you take from planet Earth to your new home?
It's a good one. A lot of obvious ones. I think April's Fool's pranks would be fantastic. Not the ones where you just lie, because we have plenty of that with the media going on, like false information, but the ones where you do stuff to people that is endearing and kind to show that you care and try to mess up the day a little bit. So maybe not just one day, but a little bit more often. That would be preferable for
Fantastic
the new planet,
idea.
I think.
So I have to watch out so you don't fool me at any time soon. So, Chris, thank you for these interesting answers.
Thank you.
You may now board the space shuttle
Looking
to
forward.
fly to your new home.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for joining the fun and our ride to the next planet. And also thank you for watching the show today. I would like to invite you to go to nextconf.eu to subscribe to our newsletter or to get some more information on the next conference, which will be happening in Hamburg in September. Finally, I'd like to thank our partners, FJORD Trends, Accenture Interactive and T3N for their support. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.